I said I will be teaching on the 7-point mind training, which is a lojong or mind training teaching. But actually, we'll probably go through most of the path like the Lama Rim. We have a prayer that's the entire Lama Rim. Because the lojong, well, she gave a good name that covers everything. She gave a name that's, what was the name you gave for this course?
It is training the mind in compassion and wisdom.
Yes, there we go. So compassion and wisdom. So we'll probably start with wisdom. We're going to do the Heart Sutra, which is the essence, the pith of wisdom. And I'll explain the Heart Sutra, but we'll explain wisdom in other places. And then the whole rest of the Mahayana path is compassion, except if you go into the Tantra, we probably won't, maybe just a few words. But so the Heart Sutra is the essence of wisdom, the Heart of Wisdom Sutra. So I often say to people when I teach, it's harder to judge. I'm used to having a room with 100 people at Tushita. Oh, when I do retreats, there's only about 15 people because they're advanced. You know, I do Tara retreat advanced, and then now the courses at Tushita and these other places I have 100 people. So this becomes like an introductory course. I wish we could do more of a tantric thing and do Tara or something, but that's another time maybe. So I often say, I like to accept questions. You shouldn't question on a different topic, but when there's something you want clarified, something that I say and you'd like to go deeper with it, you have a question about that thing that we're on right now, then you can give your question, and I will respond, but not a total change of topic. We'll leave a good amount of time for questions. I like to teach with questions because I think that's the most effective way of learning. I was a monk for 15 years. A lot of that time it was a monastery that I helped to build in France, Nalanda Monastery, Nalanda. And we would get teachings from the Yeshe Jampa Tekchok, who later became Sergei Kempo. And the way they teach, they have one finger on the root text, one finger on the commentary, and then it's just like they're reading this out, and sometimes they might give a few anecdotes after. And so it's really easy, don't fall asleep, but to not remember what was said. But when questions are asked, I always remember there's questioning. The questioning mind is the mind of learning Dharma. And you should question, why is that? You can be very critical. I don't accept that. Why is that? You know, because that's what makes us remember. So all those years as a monk, the Tibetan style, usually from these geshes, they don't have much questions. You know, they might have some at the end, but not usually at all. And so that was the way when we did it in Nalanda, people would ask a question and you'd always remember the question. So it's an effective way to teach. So if you have a question, don't hesitate about something we're talking about. The point is that you understand it's being said. If you need a clarification like that, and we'll have lots of time, write things down if you have other questions that are similar or on different, as long as they're on the basic topic contained within the Lama Rim or the Tantras, whatever you want. We'll give time at the end. We might give time at the end of the hour, at the end of the next hour, whatever. We'll work it out. There's time for questions. And Jigme can check how many, if there are a lot of people with questions, and accordingly which time. So the first question I ask is, why are we here? Why are we here? Do you have to type this? No.
No, they hear well.
So often, because this enters into this whole topic of Buddhist discovery, why are we here? People will say, well, you know, I heard about a course, you know, I thought that sounded cool, I might come. Like that, I'm interested a little bit in this topic or that topic. But this opens up a really big question in life. Why do we do anything? The fundamental drive we have is we want happiness, we don't want suffering. We want to learn more, we want to, this is the reason we do courses, this is the reason we do anything. The reason we get up in the morning, etc., etc., is because we're moving from a state to a better state, a different state, whatever. That's our common motivation for anything. So those other reasons. So we want to hope to learn something about Dharma, but we hope to change our lives in some way. I'm not guaranteeing you that that's always the way it works, but that's the main reason you hear about the Dharma, and the Dharma is about ourselves. It's about our own mind, like that. Dharma is about the mind. That will bring up another topic now. I can do the refuge prayer. You have sir, you have a copy on your, I think we have it on one of the versions of the Heart Sutra. There's a refuge prayer. So we always open with taking refuge, and then I'm going to give a whole talk on refuge, etc. at some point. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. By the perfections of giving, by giving in other perfections, may I become awakened in order to benefit all sentient beings. And in Tibetan, it's good to do in Tibetan. We do 3 times, so we'll do twice in Tibetan, once in English, which we did. Sangye chodan soki chonam la, changchu bardu dani kyab suchi, dage jin soki pe sonam ki, dola penshir sangye drupa sho, sangye chodan soki chonam la, changchu bardu dani kyab suchi, dage jin soki pe sonam ki, dola penshir sangye drupa sho. It's always repeated 3 times. And it's nice to do 2 of them in Tibetan. And if you become a Tibetan Buddhist, or if you're part of this whole system, you'll hear that prayer a lot. There's a lot of prayers that get repeated again and again. See, it's good to learn them. And they don't do them in English when there's big teachings. So like that. So briefly, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the enlightened being, the path, and the helpers on the path. The 3 jewels. Kunchok Sum in Tibetan. And the actual essence of the most important thing we're taking refuge is in the Dharma. It's often used the example of a physician. Like the Buddha is the doctor, but the medicine is the Dharma. And then the Sangha are the helpers, or the nurses, the hospital, whatever like that. So there are discussions within the different sects of Buddhism, what's more important. Well, they're both important, actually, about the Dharma. And then there's another topic we can have here with the Dharma. What is the Dharma? There's this topic called the 4 seals. Strictly speaking, what is Buddha Dharma isn't just taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. It's subscribing to the 4 seals. And if you want to know if something is Buddha Dharma or not, the 4 seals are all compounded phenomena are impermanent and changing. Afflicted minds lead to dissatisfaction. Disturbed minds. I have to think of it right now. The last one is nirvana is peace. And there's a great book about this by one of my teachers called Dzongzar Khenzi Rinpoche, How to Know You're Not a Buddhist. So this is the test. And all things are empty. Disturbing minds lead to samsara, and everything is empty of intrinsic findability, which is the essential point. This is what the Heart Sutra is as well. And the last is the removal of those afflictions is peace. So it has to have those 4. Just be calling it by the name Dharma doesn't make it Buddha Dharma or Buddha Dharma. That's the way you can check if it's Buddha Dharma or not. Dzongzar Khenzi is very funny. He makes jokes about these things. He says, if you're taught by some Lama in a high throne with golden robes and this and that, and he doesn't teach the four seals as Dharma, then it's not Dharma. But if you hear Dharma from a surfer, this is the language of Sang, Sangster Khyentse Rinpoche. If it has the four seals, it's Dharma. That's how critical it is. Because that's the Dharma. All compounded phenomena are impermanent and changing. Afflicted minds lead to suffering. Afflicted minds means minds afflicted by anger, by the kleshas, anger, pride, jealousy, etc. And removal of those afflictions is a peaceful mind. And the third one is all phenomena are empty. Everything is dependent arising is almost the same as emptiness. If you want to understand, some emptiness gets to be kind of a mystical term, empty. It sounds like some kind of nihilism for some people. Empty of what? Empty of independent existence. Everything that exists is relative, dependent arising. Nothing exists is independent. Now this is going right to the root of Dharma right at the beginning, and then as we go on, we go more and more deep with that because it turns out in all the situations. Empty of intrinsic findability. But the word emptiness kind of baffles people sometimes. Everything is empty. And it's very nice one like Thich Nhat Hanh will go, empty of what? Empty of a dependent arising, independent existence. At the time of the Buddha, he just taught that there's no, in the original Theravada, in the original at the time of the Buddha, 6th century BC, he taught that there is nothing independently existent, nothing existing from its own side. And to say things are dependent is the same as they're empty. They're empty of being independent. So empty means empty of what? Empty of independent self-existence. That's what empty of what? That's what it means. And back in those days, he just taught that everything, there's no self-existent I. He used the term Atman, was the term at the time, means self. It means the self in the spiritual tradition of Hinduism. So what Buddha taught, which is kind of opposite, was Anatman. There's no self. There's no independent self. Anatman. Because the way Atman was defined by the Buddhists at the time is that it's permanent, partless, and independent. And so what this is denying is that there's no permanent, partless, and independent self-existent. Nothing exists on its own. Nothing. This is the root, profound of Buddhism. Nothing. Not even the Buddha, not even the Dharma, not even the Sangha. Everything is dependent. What are things dependent on? They're dependent on their parts. They're dependent on causes and conditions. They're dependent on somebody knowing those things. And fourth, they're dependent on somebody knowing. Yeah, sorry. So does that make sense? Things are dependent on their parts. There's so many parts that come together and you can have something dependent on causes and conditions. That's the other. And the other main one is that somebody has to know something before it exists. It has to be known. So when we take refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, according to Zangzar Kinzi and the deeper things that we're understanding, that we take refuge in the Dharma, and the Dharma says that there's no independent self. Everything is empty of being independent. So much of the path is about that. And emptiness and dependent arising are exactly the same thing. Empty of being independent, dependent arising. Everything, the teaching of the Buddha is about dependent arising. Everything arises in dependence. And it's a hard one to grasp, isn't it? Nothing exists. Everything that exists is dependent on those things. They're not independent. There's not an independent Buddha. There's not an independent Dharma. There's not an independent Sangha. But what happens in some of the religions, they will go, yeah, they can accept that, but accept, maybe in Christianity, accept God. Accept God as independent. But that's not true. I mean, God, Jesus, whatever. And the Hindus will say everything's relatively true except Shiv. Shiv's the one absolute truth. But there isn't really any absolute truth. We use in Buddhism absolute truth to mean the understanding of emptiness. It's kind of like this paradox. So that's taking refuge in the three jewels. And it's usually the determination of becoming Buddha. You take refuge in the three jewels, as opposed to just taking we take refuge all the time. We take refuge in shopping. We take refuge in sex. We take refuge in all these relative things. But this is taking refuge in something quite specific. We take refuge to find our happiness in the three jewels, not in material, not in outer things, etc., etc., etc. Okay. I'll look at the text that you've been given. And it's going to go through these parts as well. But I'm going to first, when we have a Buddhist teaching, whenever you go to a teaching by the Dalai Lama or any great being, there's always the recitation of the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra. There's a corpus of literature in Buddhism called the Prajnaparamita, the wisdom gone beyond. The Prajnaparamita. So there's the Prajnaparamita in 100,000 verses or slokas that are still existent. There's the Prajnaparamita in 8,000. Prajnaparamita 25,000, 8,000, and there's the Prajnaparamita in one verse or sloka, and that's the Heart Sutra. So that's why it's pretty terse, the wording, because it's all included in that, The essential meaning is all included in that. By going through the Heart Sutra, you'll understand different parts of Buddha Dharma a little bit better even. But the Heart Sutra is recited, before every single teaching because it's said to remove the obstacles to the teaching. We read that now and it's remove the obstacles to the teaching. And the essence, the meaning of the Heart Sutra, emptiness, removes all obstacles, not just to the teaching, but all obstacles completely. So, homage to the perfection of wisdom. Thus I have heard at one time. The Lord was staying in Rajgir on Vulture Peak Mountain together with a great host of monks and a great host of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Lord was composed in the concentration on the course of dharmas called profound illumination. Dharmas, we're usually using it for Buddha Dharma, but the word Dharma itself just means phenomenal. But anyway, every sutra opens with thus I have heard at one time, because the disciple, the nephew of the Buddha, the disciple Ananda, he had a perfect memory. He remembered all the however many thousands were started. He memorized them. He knew them. And so this particular sutra is different. It says, thus I have heard at one time to label it like a sutra. In this particular sutra, it's taught, the Buddha goes, as you'll hear, he goes into samadhi and it's taught by the form of questions and answers between the two main disciples of the Buddha, Shariputra, the foremost disciple of the Buddha, Shariputra, and Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the Buddha of compassion, isn't it? Om Mani Padme Hum, we know the mantra. Avalokiteshvara, Avalokita. So this is Avalokita questioning the elder Shariputra. So you see the structure of the Sangha in this way also, the elder Shariputra. So the Buddha isn't talking the sutra. He's setting these people up to ask questions. There again, questions. He's setting up Shariputra to ask questions to Avalokiteshvara rather than speaking the sutra. He says a few words at the end, but it says he goes into the Lord was composed in the concentration and the course of Dharma called profound illumination. In other words, he's meditating deeply like on emptiness, and he sets up these two to ask the question. So the whole sutra is, at that time also, the noble Lord Avalokita, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, looked down. He beheld but 5 skandhas, and that in their own being were empty. Maybe some of you are familiar with 5 skandhas. We're composed of 5 skandhas. The Lord Buddha organized what a person is. He divided a person into 5 skandhas. And you'll hear these repeated a few times throughout this sutra. Because the person isn't an independent concrete self. It's a collection of these 5 skandhas. And actually skandhas, the word means heaps. The Buddha skillfully uses the word heaps because we don't grasp so much at ourselves or as being a being. We're just a heap of the 6 that will soon be 5 that will soon be listed. And these we can discuss, and you probably will want to. He beheld the 5 skandhas, and in their own being are empty. Then through the inspiration of the Buddha, the elder Shariputra said to the Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva and Mahasattva, how should any son of a good family train who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? The noble Lord Avalokita, the Bodhisattva and Mahasattva, spoke to the elder Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, any son or daughter of a good family who wishes to engage in the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it thus. He or she beholds the 5 skandhas, and that in their own being, any of the skandhas in their own being are empty, and of course the person is the collection of all of them is of course empty. So, form is emptiness. This is very famous from the Zen text. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness does not differ from form, and form does not differ from emptiness. Likewise, now the rest of the skandhas are listed. Feelings, recognition, volitions, and consciousnesses are empty. So the 5 skandhas are form, body, feelings. Feelings is what we feel about something. It's not the same way they're used very specifically. Feelings are something is we feel good, bad, or indifferent to everything that appears. Good, bad, or indifferent. Many times when people go to ask questions of a Geshe with a translator, and they talk about feelings. Oh, I had these wonderful feelings when I went to the art show. Geshe goes, what are we talking about here? But feelings, they're just good, bad, or indifferent. So this is like the root of the Dharma. It's so profound, as you will see. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is not different from form. Form is the body, right? Likewise, feelings, the mind that feels good, bad, or indifferent about things. Recognitions or discriminations, sometimes it's translated. Volition and consciousnesses are empty. So feelings, something appears to us and we always have a feeling about it, good, bad, or indifferent. Everything that appears, always. And then perception or discrimination discriminates. I want the good, I don't want the bad. I want this one, I don't want this. Now, this is so universal. Anything that appears to us, it appears to good, bad, or indifferent. And we want the good, we don't want the bad. That's and on we go. I'm trying to find the list again.
So the three is the
Form, feelings, discriminations. They're listed many times in here. Volitions, yeah, you said volitions. And consciousnesses. So the form is the body. Feelings are the consciousness that I like this, I don't like that we immediately impute to something when it appears. Recognition is, or perceptions, often this is translated better as perceptions. We want the good that we decided is good, we don't want the bad, and on from that goes our life and how we control. Volitions, karmic volitions. Those are basically all the other skandhas, all the other things of the factors of mind that are included. And then consciousnesses. There's different kinds of consciousnesses. All dharmas are emptiness, lacking differentiating marks. They are not, that means everything that exists, things, phenomena, dharmas. And that could include Bodhidharma. They're not produced or stopped. They're not defiled and not immaculate, not deficient and not complete. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no volition, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tangible, no mental object up to no eye element and no mind element, and no mental consciousness element, no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance, etc., up to no aging and death. So he goes right through all of the holiest things of the Buddha Dharma and says, no, 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 they're not independent. They're not independent. So there's so many, there's said to be, there's 51 mental factors. We can use different systems for different amounts. So one of them can be feelings, and one of them is, and then when we go to consciousnesses, volitional formations, that means that includes the other mental factors. And the five fundamental being is consciousnesses. There's the different consciousnesses that are involved. You feel free to, if you need this explained a little bit more in definite. So Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness, lacking differentiating marks. They are not produced or stopped, not defiled, not immaculate, not deficient, and not complete. So in emptiness, since everything is empty, there's no form, no feeling, no recognition, no volition, no consciousness. And then he goes to the consciousnesses. Consciousness is the last one. And he means no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. So no eye consciousness, no ear consciousness, no nose consciousness, no tongue, taste consciousness, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tangible, no mental object, no I element, up to no mind element, no mental consciousness element, no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance, etc., up to no aging and death. So we're going through the most holy scriptures of Buddhism, the holy things we study, and no. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It means they don't exist independently. It's to remind you that all these fundamental things don't exist independent. So as he goes through all of the teachings of the Buddha, because no aging and death, because we're gonna learn that. We're gonna learn the four when we do the Four Noble Truths, aging and death. There's no suffering, origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, or path leading to the cessation of suffering. There you have the Four Noble Truths. You have all of Dharma, but no. No wisdom knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment. And this is really profound. It's interesting. Because to say there's no attainment. There's no attainment of Buddhahood. There's no attainment of Bodhisattva. There's no attainment and no non-attainment. So all these holiest things are all just said to be, they're not independent. In other words, don't grasp at attainment. Don't grasp it as if it's an independent phenomenon. Don't grasp at these things. Of course, we work to get enlightened, but we don't. And finally, there is no attainment and no non-attainment. And Shariputra, because there is no non-attainment, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas abide relying on the perfection of wisdom without obscuration or thought, and so are unafraid. Transcending perverted views, they attain in the end nirvana. When they realize there's nothing to attain, that doesn't mean you can't. There's not people who become enlightened and become Buddhas and bodhisattvas. It means this attainment, everything is also empty. I hope it's hard to teach when there's not an audience. Feel like you're getting.
I'm enjoying.
But
They're enjoying online too.
You can see them?
Yeah.
Okay, we have to look at reactions from them.
They turn it up. Most of them turn it up the camera.
They don't want to be photographed.
Yeah.
Because that's how often we communicate. You go, oh, you have to look like you're struggling with that. I often teach according to that. But anyway, it's okay. But by giving feedback, that would help. I think this part doesn't make any sense to me. I think it's a pile of crap, whatever. Feel free. Because there is no attainment. That's a big one, isn't it? Everybody, we're working to attain enlightenment. We're working to attain happiness. There's no attainment and there's no non-attainment. Because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas abide relying on the perfection of wisdom without obscuration or thought, and so are unafraid. And this is also very good. We have fear. I have fear. I think everybody we know has fear. We have fear we get what we won't get what we want, we'll get what we don't want, etc. We'll go through the worldly dharmas, and that has fear going through all of them. That's one of the next topics. These fundamental things include all of the dharma, but give the basis for them. And so it's kind of encouraging in a way. We think we're not enlightened. We think we're not going to get anywhere because we have fears. But right up until we're awakened and we realize emptiness, we'll have fear. As long as there's something existing out there to be attached to or to be afraid of, there'll be fear. All the Buddhas existing in the three times, relying on the perfection of wisdom, fully awakened to the highest specific enlightenment. One should know that the mantra of the Prajnaparamita is the mantra of great knowledge, the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which allays all suffering, the truth since it has nothing wrong. The mantra of the Prajnaparamita is complained. Om Tayata. And people can say along with it. Tayata is just the beginning. Gate gate parasam gate bodhisvaha. Gate gate parasam gate bodhisvaha. Gate gate parasam gate bodhisvaha. See, ta isn't actually part of the mantra. It says, this is how it is, and then comes the mantra. Gone, gone, gone beyond, hail the goer, kind of like that. In this way, Shariputra, should a bodhisattva and a mahasattva train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Lord arose from the concentration and commended the noble Lord Avalokita, the bodhisattva and mahasattva, saying, well done, O son of a good family. So it is. So this is the Buddha finally speaks. Just as you have taught, should the profound perfection of wisdom be practiced. And all the Tathagatas is another name for Buddhas. It means those who are thus gone, who have gone to the other shore, who have gone to enlightenment, and they will rejoice. When the Lord had uttered this, the elder Shariputra, the noble Lord Avalokita, the Bodhisattva and Mahasattva, and all the people present, including all the devas, which is like gods, human beings, asuras, which is like anti-gods, Gandharvas, which are like heavenly musicians, were delighted and applauded the Lord's speech. This completes the Arya Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Ridya. So I would think there might be some questions coming from that. Did you all understand it perfectly? We can do what when I was a monk for 15 years, what the abbot used to do and what Lama Zopa used to do sometimes. If nobody has any questions, he says, okay, I'll ask you a question. What did I just say? What did I just this? They would do that and everybody go, ah, they get nervous. So if there's something to clear, because that's very hidden. It's very, very deep. Because as I said at the beginning, there's the Prajna Paramita in 100,000 slokas still existent, 25,000, 8,000, and this is in basically 8, 9 slokas. So naturally, it's very terse. It's very, very abbreviated. And there are things that are abbreviated, you're expected to kind of know in between. It's fairly straightforward in what it's talking about in a way, but the profundity about it, it cuts right through a lot of grasping at the Buddha Dharma. All the things, Four Noble Truths, they're no. It means no independent. No Buddha, no Dharma, no Sangha, no Four Noble Truths. No suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path. It goes very extensive. No questions coming out of the audience?
Do you have questions? People online, let's see. Yeah, sure. Do you have questions?
We forget about non-attainment.
Can you hold this and then ask again, please?
Keep here.
No attainment and no non-attainment?
No non-attainment. We keep on forgetting that. We concentrate on getting.
Well, because we think things exist, there's no attainment and no non-attainment. So non-attainment is something, Not becoming a Buddha, not becoming this, it is a something. So there's no attainment and no non-attainment. It's just playing both sides always. Don't think there's attainment and there's non-attainment. It's just saying that non-attainment does not exist self-existently, Non-attainment is dependent on whatever parts define it. Non-attainment probably has a definition. So it's defined, it's known. Non-attainment can be known. You can know, like when the teachings are very interesting, when the Geshe's given, you can know that there's no elephant in this room. He says, you can, with your direct perception, you can say there's no elephant in this room, It's like there's no attainment, no non-attainment.
In the refusal too.
Sure.
May I become Buddha? That's attainment. And we keep on forgetting non-attainment.
Yeah. Well, what's being said there is this emptiness goes to the root of everything, Even Buddha is a dependent arising. It doesn't mean there's not a Buddha that functions and taught for all those years and gave all the scriptures. It's absolutely true. But that Buddha realized, because he's giving the sutra, he realized that he's not self-existent. If we realized shunyata, we'll realize that ourselves also, as well as everything else, is empty of being intrinsic. And as we get to what we're going to have to practice here on the path is when we get to the lojong part, the obstacle to generating compassion is that we believe that this I exist, permanent, partless, independent. I know I exist. I can feel it. I can tell it, So the great paradox is that we're doing everything to feed this I which never really existed truly, but we believe it exists truly. So that's where that comes in. When we were going to move into that, because it was supposed to be the original topic of this course, and it is, it's the most important part. This is the wisdom part, and then there's the compassion part. But what keeps us from being compassionate is selfishness. Me, I want for me, me. So it's also empty. The very I. Buddha in 600 BC was radical. Emptiness is called no Atman, because the belief at the time is that there is a permanent, partless, and independent self. That's the Atman. That's the ultimate self. It's the soul or whatever, yeah? But we shouldn't get too arrogant about that, because we all believe in an Atman. We all believe that there's an I, me, I'm hungry, I'm this, I'm that, So it's not so, to say that there's no Atman. It says when there's no separate. Atman says there's a separate self. Buddhism says there's no separate self. There's the relative self that is, and there's not some self that possesses that. There's not an Atman or a soul or something that possesses all the other aspects of being. And it's deep. You have to let go of something. Just to know that everything is empty of being independent. And when we get into, we can start going into some of these things as we go, and we can go back. Everything appears to us as independent. Everything. Everybody. Even a Buddha, things that appear to a Buddha, they appear as independent, but the Buddha's already realized that they're not. I don't buy this movie anymore, I hope that makes sense to people. Yeah, it's when anything until we realize shunyata and have the final realization, when we realize that, then we'll be free from samsara. We'll be arhats. Most of you probably out there know that there's two kinds of Buddhism. There's they'll say the Mahayana and the Hinayana, but the Hinayana, they don't call themselves little vehicle. That's a pejorative term. They say the teaching of the elders, We have the original Buddhism. So that is something you can meditate on for the rest of your lives in many ways, It helps to let go, where there's nothing to attain, but there is. We can, right in the next verse it says there's no enlightenment. It says to attain enlightenment. It's kind of tricky in a way. So, going back.
Oh, we have another question online.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Could you explain how the universe independently arising? I think he's asking about independently arising again, but he asked about the universe.
The universe.
Yeah.
Well, they have these scientific conferences with all the greatest scientists and physicists in the world with the Dalai Lama. And they always say it all starts with the Big Bang. This is what the scientists say. And the Dalai Lama goes, Well, the Big Bang must have had a cause. The Big Bang didn't come from nothing. So however you take it, the Big Bang comes from, whatever, you can do that as well. So there's this idea that from a Big Bang arises the universe. And the Dalai Lama, just by knowing the Dharma, he goes, well, Big Bang, so what? It comes from something. Everything comes from something. Everything appears as independent, but not independent. I mean, that blows my mind. Everything that appears to us appears as if existing to its own side. I see you existing there, I believe you're existing from your own side. And I see my mother and I see whoever, bum, 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 bum. But you don't exist from your own side. You're dependent on your parts. You're dependent on causes and conditions. You're dependent on somebody knowing you. If I didn't know you or appear to me, you wouldn't exist either. Those are the 4 levels of, yeah. So whoever asked that question, is it okay? We need to clarify something more? Probably. Feel free to clarify things. You're happy? That's good.
He's typing.
Oh, he's typing.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, I thought they can't just answer because somebody's got to type it down, isn't it?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd have to go back and listen to them all, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Well, I have given courses online during I think it was during the COVID days, and I could interact with people online. You could talk with them, I suppose I still could if I was the only one with a computer.
His question was,
Huh?
how independent existence created the world. His question was that.
I mean, well, everything, including the world, comes from causes. A cause is something we say that's independent, but it's not. There's no such thing as an independent phenomenon. Everything is dependent. To say something is dependent is to say it's empty. Emptiness gets to be this kind of nihilistic, funny-sounding term. It's just, all it means is empty of an independent self. That's all it means. And the Buddha just taught that there's no separate self. It's independent. There's no being that, we know who we are. Well, we're dependent arising. We're dependent on form, feelings, all our senses. But there's no other being outside of that. There's no other something outside of that, call it a soul or another being, that controls that process. That's all there is.
No observer. Scientists say.
Yeah. Okay.
There is no observer.
Well, this is another question which maybe we could discuss about rebirth. Yeah. Okay. So at the beginning, I was going to give a little thing on what is mind and Buddhism, and we jumped right into the topic. And Buddhism assumes that there's rebirth. But you could say even the person that's being reborn is independent. They're not independent. There's nothing independent, zero, on this planet. No God, no Jesus, no Buddha. They're not independent. They're all dependent on their parts. On their parts, or us knowing them, or having some relation to them. There's always a causality there. So, rebirth is a major part of Buddha Dharma. One of the big questions is, what is reborn? I always want to know, what is reborn, There's this one Lama, he gave the answer, and it's very difficult. Is it the subtle mind? It's got to be some form of consciousness, I was going to talk about consciousness. I have all these notes from old courses with Rabina, what's consciousness, and subtle consciousness, and subtlest consciousness. So it'd have to be some kind of consciousness that's reborn. Not gross mind, not subtle mind, subtlest mind.
This is a tricky one, no? Because there is something that will be reborn, and that there is something that is continuing. but yet there is no Atman, no self. But there is something that's good. So this is also a little bit paradoxical, no?
Well, it is if you think that this subtle mind that's moving along is independent. Atman, it's defined. In the ancient Hindu scriptures, time of the Buddha, 6th century BC, they defined Atman as being permanent, partless, and independent. And Buddhist, the first seal is that all compounded phenomena are impermanent and changing. So that they say it's ultimately existent, you know.
I see.
And sometimes they'll use that wrongly, saying, well, the Buddha is ultimately existent. The Buddha is not ultimately existent. It's also dependent arising. And it's common. I remember I have people, some in the theistic traditions like Christianity, they'll say, yeah, you can say everything's illusion except God, you know, except something that I believe in. I used to have these friends that were Babas, one of the most Sadhu Baba, one of the great Sadhu Babas of Himachal Pradesh. He was a friend of my wife's and a friend of mine, and he didn't know any English, and I hardly knew, my Hindi wasn't good enough. But basically it come down to that nothing is ultimate. And he said all of the gods, everything is Maya, everything is not ultimate, you know, Maya, 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 Maya. He goes, except Shiva, that's ultimate. And like Christians would say, except God, that's got to be ultimate. We gotta be ultimate. They're not understanding the whole thing. Everything functions fine. Everything still functions. Things couldn't function if they weren't impermanent and if they were ultimately existent. Everything would be frozen.
How about some physicists saying that both exist and non-exist, both exist and not exist. If there is observer exist, then no observer not exist. Like that.
Maybe I made it confusing. Like with the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is non-existent. To this place, there's no elephant in the room. But elephants are dependent arisings. Our hallucinations are dependent arising. So, is that clear? You just want to discuss something more?
Yeah.
Go ahead, it's fine. You don't understand how something non-existent can exist. It means it's non-existent. There's no attainment and no non-attainment.
Yeah.
So non-attainment exists. I have no attainments. So I can tell you that any existence that I have are an ultimate. So, in the order of things, which I put together pretty recently, I didn't just go right into following our little text of the Lojong, of the mind training. I've given all this background information. So what we've done so far, we read the Heart Sutra. And the reason the Heart Sutra is the pith of emptiness. It's the Prajnaparamita, the wisdom gone beyond. It's the one that's the most abbreviated. So that, of course, it's deep. It's hard to grasp it, this stuff. It's hard to grasp, you know. I know certain things exist, but one contemplates. And when we get to the part where it's just self-cherishing mind, we believe in I. We believe in I. I know there's an I. I feel it. I feel it in my heart. If somebody insults me, somebody praises me, it comes out really strong, like a love in the heart. Oh, you said that to me. She said that to me. This is going to come up more when we get with working with these delusions. It's really important. So we'd have the Heart Sutra, and then I was going to tell the story of the Buddha, and we're still filling things in. I have all these old notes that I found, and they're all in a disastrous sort of condition.
Someone said, Buddham Sarnam Gacchami has no I, no pronoun.
No I.
In English language system, there's I.
Well, you know, you can find out if someone's, what makes something Buddhist, as I already says, is this thing of that is emptiness. All phenomena are impermanent, they're changing. Impermanent doesn't mean lasting forever, it means they're changing where they exist. Impermanent phenomena changing. Like the river's always changing.
River.
You can't jump in the same river twice, they say.
Yeah.
And then empty is one of them. And impermanent. All phenomena impermanent. Afflicted minds lead to suffering. Nirvana is bliss. The removal of kleshas. This has been sort of I'm very apologizing to all these people out there. This has been my state of mind in the last period of my life. I've been going through things and I can't remember things and da 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 da. Other things you remember precisely. Then I'll quickly go through the story of the Buddha. I might not have to look at it again, and I'll just go quick. Because very few people teach the story of all these teachings we get. What about Shakyamuni? We know about Tara, we know about all these different ones, but what about Shakyamuni?
Yeah.
So, the story of the Buddha is a very great teaching. 2,500 years ago, maybe it's more than since this thing came out, 600 BC, there was a prediction, you see. There was the Queen Mahamaya and King Suddhodana. Queen Mahamaya was pregnant. She was going to have a child. And they called in all of the great astrologers, all the great Jyotish, all the people to know. Hello.
Hello, I'm sorry to disturb you.
Yeah?
I'm coming to take my things from here. Should I take it?
I guess.
Can you wait the break?
I'm in a hurry. Someone is waiting for me.
Okay.
So I will just pick my things and go, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
It's not up to me, it's up to the boss. What things? Things that are just your personal stuff?
They use the space to do sound healing and other things.
Oh, okay.
She's keeping her things there.
So Queen Mahamaya and King Suddhodana. So she's pregnant. And so what they do, and they do this still, and I live in an Hindu village, I live in a town. When someone's going to be born, they call in, they do Jyotish, they do astrology, they check up, what's this person going to be like, good, bad, whatever. So they brought in the greatest astrologer to come and check to see what this birth is going to be. And the astrologer, he went, oh, and he started to grin. And of course, the king and queen, well, is something wrong? Is something wrong? He says, no, I'm going to miss this birth. This person is going to be, can only be two things, a fully enlightened Buddha or a Chakravartin, a wheel-turning king, a universal king. Those are the only two destinies, for this child. To be the king of the world like the great emperor, like Ashoka, or to be a fully enlightened being. That's the prediction. So, following that, there's this whole story of the Buddha about, let me see. That doesn't disturb me at all. I'm just trying to go through the order of things here. So the Buddha was actually of the Kshatriya class, Kshatriya, which is the warrior caste. He wasn't of the Brahmin. He's not a Brahmin, the Buddha. The highest caste, supposedly, but he came from Kshatriya caste, which is a warrior caste. So he was raised to be a great warrior, a great prince, a great king, basically. But he was doing all these other things, almost like they have in the West in the ancient times, jousting and sword fighting and shooting arrows, all those things. He was excelled at all that stuff completely. And
The kings used to go to war themselves. And so they have to do it.
yeah, they trained to be like Kshatriyas would anyway. They would train in all this stuff. And he also was trained in astrology, trained in diplomacy. I mean, that's what was happening at the time. And so anyway, things kind of went along there in the palace. And naturally, the prediction is going to be the emperor of the universe, or go off and give up the world and be a Buddha. Dad, the father. These people are archetypally represent someone. Father represents the obstacle to going on to becoming a Buddha, which he did. Yeah, no, I prefer that my son becomes the emperor of the universe, not some sadhu that goes off and real. Same thing with my parents. Same thing with your parents, probably, didn't they? Didn't they? I'm going off to India to study Dharma. Well, I should do something useful. You just contemplate your navel. And so, they would rather see parents would rather stayed at home and got a job and lived the real life. I was often, my first time I came to India, I went overland from Spain in 1991. Overland through Iran, Afghanistan, Khyber Pass, etc., the Yellow Brick Road or whatever they called it. And the woman I was traveling with, her mother would write and say, "Would you give me the license plate on your car number? When are you going to come home and start living? We're having the best time of our lives. When are you going to come home and start living all this travel nonsense, And so it's funny so Dad actually, yeah, he's going to be, they believe this, Jyotish, he could be emperor of the universe. So everything, his whole palace life, he was just to seduce him to staying in the palace. He was married, he had a kid. He was not Buddha yet, so he wasn't in that sense. And so, which would be normal for a young Kshatriyan prince. And as I said, he was excelled in all of those arts, like the swordsmanship. He excelled at everything that he did. He was way ahead. And then one day, they had a plow festival, which is common. There's the two most important things in life in a rural India, probably Nepal, same, is the plow festival, where you're the planting of the seeds. You plow the land and you plant the seeds. So the king used to come and actually make the first furrow with the plow for auspiciousness, so that the country would have to bless it, that it becomes a good crops coming. Because there's nothing more important to that for most people, food, huh? A good festival. And then also the harvest at the end, If it's a successful one, that's always a big deal. And so he was watching. He's kind of in the royal tent with his wife and kid, I guess. And there's this plow festival. So as they're plowing up the land, there's these worms that get cut by the plowing, and there's sparrows that come down and take the worms, and there's hawks that come down and take the sparrows. So the whole scene is suffering, because Buddhism, we'll get into this, is like suffering. Dukkha. Well, we'll talk about that later. It really doesn't mean quite suffering in the same way that we think of everything as suffering. But he saw that things aren't okay, because his father had been keeping him. He's got his wife. He's got anything he wants. You got anything you want, kid. Anything you want. So to keep the meaning of life away from his son, the prince. So he watches his plow festival, and he watches that, and he goes, "Something's wrong with this picture. What's happening to these worms? What's happening to these birds? The people think they're dying." And then there's the famous story where he only really had one friend. He's not allowed to have just like, you got to hang out with your one friend that's approved. Get in trouble. So he had his one friend, and who is his charioteer, and Chana. And so he decided to find out the meaning of life, So I know when I was a teenager, when I was 15, You went out, you snuck out at night to find out the meaning of life. You might have thrown pebbles at your girlfriend's window. Oh, I wasn't even having sex yet there, but it was like the meaning of life is out there at night somehow, you know. So he snuck out. Siddhartha did the same. He went with his friend Chan, and he's never seen beyond the kingdom walls. He'd never seen beyond. I mean, of course, couldn't be very realistic. I've been to a couple of Astuts in Nepal, you know, the old ruins, you know. So anyway, he wasn't allowed to go out because his father protected him. Everything had to be good, wonderful, beautiful. So he goes out, and the order of the gates, I think I'll remember, which is Eastern Gate. So they went out with Chana, and he sneaks out with Chana. He goes to the Eastern Gate, and he sees an old broken man, an old man going along, just really barely hanging in there, you know. And this disturbs him. All these things that come up, they disturb him. Then he went out in the I just forget the order. I know all. Then he went to Southern Gate, and he sees a man ravaged by sickness. And then he went out the Western Gate, and there was a corpse, a funeral, people wailing. And then finally he went out the North Gate, and there was a mendicant who looked peaceful and happy, you know, the sadhu, the monk. So he went out, and so he saw old age, sickness, and death. The whole purpose of Dharma was to overcome old age, sickness, and death, isn't it? You know, like old age, sickness, and death. But he didn't know there was any old age. Most people all deny. They all got their phones and their TV. They don't think much of. I mean, they see death on television, but it's not real. You know, when it happens, real sometimes big effect for people. So, and he was very disturbed. He was very, very disturbed by this. And so he goes to his father. You know, his father says, "You look troubled, son. What's the problem? What's the matter?" He goes, "I'll give you anything you want." He said, "Okay, I want no old age, sickness, and death. For you, Mom, my life, and all the people of the kingdom. What kind of king would I be if I didn't take care of those things first instead of this other nonsense, you know?" So Dad goes, there, goodbye, my son, the emperor of the world, you know, because Shaki was a little teeny kingdom. It wasn't very big and much, and so Dad would like to have the whole works. So, what did he do? What did Dad do? The same anesthetizing thing that we do in modern times. He threw a party of parties, you know. Women and liquor, and I mean, huge party was thrown for his son, you know. And that's often it's a hook, you know. Don't think too much about these other things. But at that point, he was just he knew he was going to head out. At that point, he was going to go find out the real meaning and leave the place. So he spent the time with his wife and with his child. And as he goes out, there's this remnants of a party. There's nothing horrible. The beginning of a party, people think is all beautiful, but at the end, I lived in Seattle, and the women in this house, we decided to throw a really big party. We divided it. We thought, we'll invite the whole city of Seattle to come to our party. And a lot of people came. It was like, a lot of people came to this party. We got the best band in Seattle to come and play. And in the morning, it's like, you know, cigarettes put out in the food, you know, and everything's just horrible. What looked like beautiful the night before is just horrible, you know. And so he's stepping out over this, it's making him even more renounced, you know, because you kind of renounce parties after that. They're not going to have another party again. So that didn't work, and he snuck out. So he went with his friend Chana, then crossed the Anoma River and said goodbye. And he crossed over to the other side, and he started to go out and look for the meaning of life. Because remember, the last vision, I didn't make a big deal of it so much. He saw a sadhu, and the sadhu looked happy. The old man, old age, sickness, death, nobody looked very happy. But he saw a sadhu wearing rags. He had nothing and looked content, you know. So he goes, "That's interesting. this guy doesn't have anything. He's going around in rags and he seems to be kind of happy like that, you know. So he decided to go out and hit the road as a sadhu. And he caught up with a few other people that were looking for the same. What do you do when you're looking for the truth? You look for gurus. Let's go find a guru. You know? So he'd heard that there were the two most famous gurus that he heard about. They went to the first one, and what this guru taught is one point of concentration. Samadhi, one point of concentration. All the spiritual powers come from one point of concentration. Buddhism, you have to have shamatha before you have vipassana. In Tibetan, you'd say you have to have one point of concentration is the tool with you can investigate the mind, and everything comes from the mind. So he was top. And he went to all the training, and so he got all the powers and everything. And then he decides, well, I'm leaving. And the head of this ashram goes, no, you stay with me. I need someone to take on the franchise kind of peak, you know, like. And he says, no, I came here to find out how to overcome old age, sickness, and death. That hasn't happened yet, you know what I mean? I have spiritual powers. I can read minds and go through walls. This is very interesting. If you have one point of concentration, all those powers are there. What you concentrate on is where the powers happen. It's like there's one of the greatest textbooks for one point of concentration and practicing that. It's called the Visuddhimagga Buddhaghosa. It's a Sri Lankan text. It's a Theravada text. And it has all the ways to get one point of concentration because they tend to, same in their tradition, you have to have the samadhi before you can get empty. You get emptiness. The difference between the two traditions is they get empty and they're free from samsara, and the Mahayana path is combining that realization of emptiness with the wish to awaken for all beings, the Mahayana path. That's what makes Mahayana aspiration. So, he leaves, and then there was another guru they were going to go. Oh no! What the realization that this guru brought him to was all of the jhanas. There's form jhanas and formless jhanas, all the absorptions, and all these powers come at different times. So and this is a very high price. Almost nobody gets these things at all, because, in fact, in this day and age, nobody ever gets one point of concentration. With cell phones and TV, forget it. It's not going to happen anymore. There are very few people. Even Buddhists don't get it because they all got cell phones. All the guys, not very many get it. You know, it's like to go off and do a Shine retreat, 7 months, perfect condition, you've got to give up all that other stuff. So, anyway, but of course some Buddhists have one point of concentration. But it's getting more and more scarce. But you have to have that before you can really realize emptiness, vipassana. Vipassana is a word that we talk about vipassana courses in the West, where actually what those courses are satipatthana. They're the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But vipassana is penetrative insight into the nature of reality, meditating on emptiness. That's the real meaning of that word. They just adopted the term, but so what? You know, now Westerners think of vipassana as satipatthana, where you go sit and you watch the body, mind, feelings, etc. So, and so he got him through all of the form jhanas. They're very clearly delineated. Exactly the same Hindu tradition, doesn't matter. We have a mind, you know, any tradition. There's the 4 absorptions of form, and there's the form and formless, and then at the end is the deepest one, the realization of one point of concentration. So we got all the ones that form and all the spiritual powers that come from that. I can't quite delineate them all. And they went to the second guru, and same, he was like top, and he went through all the formless absorptions. Peak of samsara, it's called, the ultimate absorption into one pointed. That's called as high as you can get and still be in samsara. As high as you can get and still be in samsara. So it's a deep realization, one pointed. And you have all the powers, reading minds. And the Buddhism doesn't really emphasize so much those things, but in fact, a lot of bodhisattvas will want to get one point of concentration to gain these powers to help disciples. You can read minds. one of the greatest things that happened with me with Lama Yeshe or someone, he knew what's going on in my mind. He knew what my problems were, my hang-ups were. He knew exactly what to teach me. He knew everything I'm thinking. This was very disturbing, I tell you, God, if he knows that, it means he knows everything. He knows Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa. But so it's still useful. It's not. It doesn't lead to enlightenment on its own, but it's the tool in order to investigate the Dharma at one point of concentration. Like you could learn French in weeks with one point of concentration, or Sanskrit. The power of the human mind is amazing. So he went through all the formless absorptions, and it still didn't happen. Same thing. No, I'm going. This isn't it. Old age, sickness, and death. I can't. He's a bodhisattva. He's aspiring bodhisattva before there was the name bodhisattva. Maybe, well, they were bodhisattvas. They say the life of the Buddha was just bodhisattvas manifesting this stuff, So he said, I know I overcome old age, sickness, and death. My vow is to overcome old age, sickness, and death. It didn't happen. I got all these powers. It's wonderful. I'm blissful all the time. No. So we went out and hit the road again. So he came to what is now Bodhgaya, and he was sitting under a tree. This isn't the final tree of enlightenment. He was across the river, the Sujata tree. You in the Bodhgaya?
Not yet.
You cross the river, it's called the Sujata tree. Sujata, he met kind of Sujata or Sujata. So he's this. The other thing that was is he decides he's going to starve. He's going to fast. I'm going to fast until I'm not going to eat any food, until he got down to one sesame seed or one grain of rice a day. He fasted. So you can imagine what he looked like. He looked like he was already dead, And so he sat under a tree, and it looked quite shocking. He was so wasted from fasting, because that was considered the way at the time. You can fast your way. You can realize the pure Atman by getting rid of this regular self by fasting. Release the pure Atman. But if that's the right word, it's probably not. But anyway, he's there, and there's this girl. She's a milkmaiden, Sujata, and she sees this guy. And he goes, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she gives him milk. She brings the milk she brought him milk, and she also brought, and then I think her brother has another name, brought a mat to meditate on. So he recovered. He felt good, and then he came to the realization, middle way we're talking about middle way when we talk about emptiness, but the fundamental middle way is the middle way between extreme asceticism and extreme, what's the other word of, indulging. Extreme indulging. So the middle way. So this is where he realized the gross middle way. He goes, the big parties, that's just pure sense pleasure. And the starvation, giving up. Yeah, it's too extreme. He says it's got to be the middle way between extreme asceticism and extreme hedonism. Hedonism is the king's life, prince's life, and so extremism is a lot of people practicing by saying they're not going to eat, which is a mistake. It's not a true path. You should eat well, Even the Buddha time, when he's a prince, not before you should eat. The thing that you starve yourself and then you're left with just pure mind, that doesn't really work like that. So anyway, that's the first definition of middle way between extreme asceticism and hedonism. We try to practice a path. And that's good advice for anybody, Don't go to the extremes of overindulgence or not getting enough of what your basic needs. So then he's reinvigorated. He crosses the Saranjama, the river at Bodhgaya. I have to think of the name. He crossed the river, and you can do that today when you go to Bodhgaya. You can cross the river. There's a bridge, and you can go to the Sujata tree where Siddhartha sat, And there's many hotels in Bodhgaya named the Sujata Rest House, whatever. She was the one who brought food to the starving aspirant. So that's something to worship. In Hinduism, Lakshmi has that form. You go to the Lakshmi temple in Varanasi, you offer bags of rice because she's providing. She's the provider, the goddess who provides food, rice, etc., etc. It's an important part of culture, isn't it? You know, food. Maybe we get fussy about good. So anyway, he crossed the river and he sat down and he says, "This is it. I won't get up until I'm enlightened, until I've attained full enlightened Buddha." So he had one point of concentration, didn't he, from both those people. So he could look back, and he looked back and saw, this is all in the text of the life of the Buddha. He looked back and he saw life after life after life, all his rebirths. He saw all of his rebirths going back beginningless, almost, you know. I don't know if he went back to animal rebirths, but anyway, human, whatever. So he could see getting born, getting a job, getting married, getting divorced, whatever it was. Life after life after life after life after life, householder life. And you look back over and see it all, think about it. It's like, wow. Easy to renounce that, isn't it? Like, this isn't the right path. But he had the power to see that. And so he realized that in the first watch of the night. I'm trying to think of the other 4 watches of the night. I might have written them down, but you just kind of know them. And he vowed, even if my flesh dries up and falls away, I will not move from this spot until I reach enlightenment. So then he has his realization. And when he's starting to get this realization, starting to get on the point of being free, Mara, who's kind of like the devil, he's kind of the opposite force, sent the 4 daughters to tempt him. We'll tempt him. We'll get him. We'll get this guy, you know. And so there's tankas of this. There's a set of 4 tankas. The first one, beautiful, sexy women, like so many, bam, 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 bam. The daughters of Mara were sent to kind of seduce him. Didn't fall for that one. And then the next one is like all the armies with spears in his face, you know. Spears in his face, like, you know. No, not moved by that. So everything Mara threw at the prince kept him from getting that final enlightenment, to trick him away from it. And the final one is this question. He got enlightenment somewhere along here, I think. And anyway, but the way they present it in the text is that, how do you know you're enlightened? Who's a witness? Who witnessed your enlightenment? And you see the Buddha passage. It's called the earth-touching mudra. This touches the earth. Earth is my witness. Gaia, the goddess of the earth, is my witness to enlightenment, you know. So, boom, immovable. And then he's enlightened. And then he goes off and hits the road. When he first got enlightened, he thought, you know, he's seen it all with his clairvoyance. He's seen everything. He's gone through all these things. And he says, maybe nobody's going to believe this path. It's too much. It's too difficult. So, and then actually the gods came in. He had this relationship with the gods because the Buddha met the gods many times because they recognized that Buddha was the higher one. They recognized, they became Dharma protectors, Dharmapalas. And they encouraged him, no, you go teach, please teach, please teach. That's what it says in the story of the life. So that's when he decided to teach the Dharma. And he headed off walking from Bodhgaya to a place outside of Varanasi called Sarnath. He ended up there. And he met up with the four other disciples that were looking for a place to. They're all of them. They became his sangha, first sangha. And at first when they saw us, they said, don't look at him, don't look at Shakyamuni. He stopped fasting. He was copped out, no, don't look at him. Even though now he's well fed and everything. And so anyway, he was requested to turn the wheel of Dharma. And the first teaching of the Buddha is called the Four Noble Truths. Not because the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Those are the four.
Break?
Is it time?
It will be fast, yes.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I thought we'd be breaking the... That's perfect.
Excellent.
Thank you, Buddhaji.
So we do half an hour break. We come back 12. Maybe 5
Okay.